Whether you're a tech enthusiast, industry professional, or just curious about the future of AI Agents Unleashed will keep you informed and inspired. Buckle up and get ready to unleash the potential of AI.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of generative AI and its impact on fake news. This technology is developing so quickly, I have to admit I'm a little nervous about what it all means for the future of, well, truth.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that's raising a lot of eyebrows, and for good reason.
To help us navigate this tricky terrain, we've got some fresh research. A survey that was just published a few days ago examining how AI is being used to both create and detect fake news. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll have a solid understanding of how this tech works, the potential for good and bad, and maybe even some ideas on how to navigate this new information landscape.
Sounds like a plan. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly is generative AI? I mean, I've heard the term thrown around, but to be honest, I'm still a bit fuzzy on the details.
Think of it this way. Generative AI is like an AI that can create things. We're not talking about robots building cars here, but rather AI that can generate incredibly realistic content, text, images, even videos that are almost indistinguishable from the real thing.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying there's AI out there that can write a news article or create a video that looks completely authentic, but is actually entirely fabricated.
Exactly. And the technology behind it is advancing at an incredible pace.
Okay, that's a little unsettling. What kind of technology is powering this? I've heard terms like GANs and transformers are those involved. They sound like something out of a sci-fi movie.
They do, don't they? But they're very real, and they're driving this revolution. GANs, or generative adversarial networks, are a key player here. Imagine two AI algorithms battling it out. One tries to create content, the other tries to detect the fake. This constant back and forth actually pushes both AIs to become more sophisticated. The creator gets better at generating realistic content, while the detector gets better at spotting the fakes.
It's like an AI arms race, but for creating and detecting fake content.
That's a great analogy. And then you have transformers, which are especially good at understanding and generating human language. Think of them as the masterminds behind AI chatbots and language translation tools. But they're also being used to create incredibly convincing fake news articles and social media posts.
So let me get this straight. We've got AI that can create hyper-realistic content, ANDAI, that can understand and mimic human language. Isn't this like handing a megaphone to someone who wants to spread misinformation?
Yeah.
How do we even begin to differentiate what's real from what's AI generated?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's a challenge researchers are grappling with right now. But before we dive into detection, let's talk about how this technology is being used to create fake news in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack that. What are some specific examples of how generative AI is being used to manufacture fake news? This research mentioned something about a fake news factory. What do they mean by that?
Well, one study highlighted in the research used AI to generate synthetic news articles on various topics. These articles weren't just random gibberish. They were crafted to resemble legitimate news reports, complete with quotes, statistics, and even references to real-world events. The scary part is that they were incredibly convincing. Even experts had trouble distinguishing them from real articles at times.
That's seriously concerning. I mean, if experts are having trouble spotting the fakes, what hope does the average person have? It's like we're entering a world where we can't even trust what we read anymore.
It definitely raises some serious concerns about the erosion of trust and the potential for widespread misinformation.
Okay, so we've talked about how this AI can create fake news, but the research also mentions its potential for good. Is there a way to use this technology to actually fight back against fake news?
Absolutely. There are researchers and developers working on tools that use generative AI to detect fake news. One example is XPake. It analyzes text, looking for subtle inconsistencies or patterns that suggest manipulation. It's kind of like having an AI detective that can spot the telltale signs of a fabricated story.
That's fascinating. So in a way, we're using the same technology that's creating the problem to try and solve it. It's like fighting fire with fire.
You could say that. The hope is that by leveraging AI for detection, we can create a sort of digital immune system that can help us identify and flag potentially harmful content before it spreads too widely.
So it's like an ongoing battle between those using AI for malicious purposes and those trying to use it for good.
It's a constant game of cat and mouse, with both sides trying to outsmart each other.
But even with these AI detection tools, Isn't social media still a major part of the problem? It seems like that's where a lot of this fake news spreads like wildfire.
You're absolutely right. Social media platforms play a significant role in how information, both real and fake, is disseminated. The research actually found a strong correlation between the spread of fake news and user engagement patterns on social media. The more people interact with a piece of content, liking it, sharing it, commenting on it, the more likely it is to be seen by others. And unfortunately, this applies to fake news just as much as it does to real news.
I guess it makes sense. Those algorithms are designed to show us what they think we want to see, and sometimes that includes content that's designed to provoke a strong emotional response, even if it's based on false information.
Exactly. And that brings us to a particularly concerning aspect of this whole issue: deepfakes.
Okay, deep fakes. I've heard that term before, but I'll admit it still creeps me out a little. Can you explain what they are and why they're so dangerous?
A deepfake is a video that has been manipulated using AI to make it look like someone is saying or doing something they never actually did. Think of it like Photoshop for videos, but on a much more sophisticated level.
So you're saying that someone could create a video of a politician giving a speech that never happened, or a celebrity endorsing a product they've never even heard of, and it would look completely real.
That's exactly what's happening. And the technology is getting so good that it's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish real videos from deepfakes.
That's terrifying. I mean, what happens when we can't even trust what we see with our own eyes? It feels like we're stepping into some kind of dystopian sci-fi movie where reality itself is up for grabs.
It's a valid concern, and the stakes are high. The research mentions a study that found even a single deepfake video, if strategically deployed, could have major real-world consequences, sparking diplomatic incidents, manipulating financial markets, even inciting violence.
Wow. So we've got AI creating fake news articles, AI mimicking human language on social media, and now AI creating fake videos that are practically indistinguishable from reality. Where does this leave us?
That's a question we'll explore further as we continue our deep dive. But one thing is clear. We're entering an era where critical thinking and media literacy are more important than ever before.
I think you're right about that. This is heavy stuff. We need to take a break to process all this, but when we come back, let's delve into what all of this means for us, how we can protect ourselves, and what role, if any, social media platforms should be playing in all of this. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about deepfakes and how this technology is getting so good, it's becoming hard to tell what's real and what's fake. It's pretty scary stuff.
It is, and it really underscores the importance of critical thinking in this new digital landscape.
Absolutely. But before we dive deeper into that, I'm curious about the people behind all of this. I mean, who's actually creating and spreading this fake news? And why?
That's a great question. It's easy to blame the technology, but ultimately there are humans behind these malicious acts.
So what does the research say about the motivations behind creating and spreading fake news? Is it purely malicious, or is there more to it?
It's a complex issue, but the research highlights a few key factors. Sometimes it boils down to simple economics. Creating and spreading sensational content can drive traffic to websites and generate ad revenue. Other times, it's about pushing specific ideologies or political agendas, using fake news to manipulate public opinion or discredit opponents.
So it's a mix of greed and manipulation. But what about the people who share fake news? Surely not everyone who shares a fake news story is doing so with malicious intent.
That's right. Not everyone who shares fake news is intentionally trying to deceive others. Some people genuinely believe what they're sharing. They might lack the media literacy skills to critically evaluate information and identify red flags. Others might share fake news because it confirms their existing biases or reinforces beliefs they already hold.
It's almost like fake news preys on our desire to be in the know, or our need to feel like we belong to a certain group.
Exactly. And that's why developing those critical thinking skills is crucial. We need to be aware of our own biases, question the information we encounter, and be willing to verify sources before we hit that share button.
This reminds me of some of the historical examples mentioned in the research, like how Stalin used photo manipulation to literally erase his enemies from official photographs, or how Goebbels used propaganda to control public opinion in Nazi Germany.
Those examples serve as a stark reminder that the manipulation of information is nothing new. What's different now is the speed and scale at which it can happen, thanks to technology and the potential for individual targeting.
That's what makes generative AI so concerning. It's not just about mass propaganda anymore. It's about creating content that's tailored to specific individuals, playing on their vulnerabilities and beliefs. It's almost like a weaponized form of marketing, But instead of selling products, they're selling ideas and often harmful ones.
The research actually brought up Cambridge Analytica as a relevant example. While they didn't use generative AI back then, their strategy was similar. They used data to target individuals with personalized messages designed to influence their opinions and behavior.
It's a chilling thought. So where do we go from here? What's the solution to this whole mess? Is there even one?
It's a complex problem, but I don't think we should despair. It starts with education and awareness. We need to equip people with the tools to evaluate sources, recognize bias, and understand how algorithms influence what they see online. Media literacy has never been more important.
I completely agree. But it can't just be on individuals, right? Social media platforms have a responsibility here too.
Absolutely. Platforms need to be more transparent about their algorithms, how they moderate content, and how they combat the spread of misinformation. Perhaps they could utilize some of those AI detection tools we discussed earlier to flag potentially fake content or slow down its spread.
That makes sense. But wouldn't that also raise concerns about censorship? Who gets to decide what's considered fake and what isn't? It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It is, and that's why it's crucial to have open discussions and involve multiple stakeholders, including experts in technology, ethics, law, and policy. Finding the right balance between freedom of speech and protecting people from harm is essential.
So we're talking about a multi-pronged approach. Individual responsibility, platform accountability, and maybe even some new laws or regulations to address the unique challenges of AI-generated fake news.
You got it. It's a complex issue that demands a multifaceted solution. We need to be prepared to adapt and evolve as the technology continues to develop.
This all makes me wonder about the deeper philosophical implications. If we're entering a world where we can't always trust what we see and hear, how does that change our relationship with truth and reality? It's pretty heavy stuff to consider.
It is, and to be honest, it's something philosophers and ethicists have been grappling with for centuries. But these questions are becoming increasingly urgent as technology blurs the lines between real and fake.
So are we headed for a dystopian future where we're constantly questioning everything we see and hear, where truth is subjective and reality is malleable?
It's certainly a possibility, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think there's still hope. We've faced challenges before, and we've found ways to overcome them. We can do the same with this. We can develop the tools, the skills, and the frameworks to navigate this new landscape.
You're saying we need to adapt to this new reality where AI is both a threat and an opportunity. It's about finding a way to coexist with this powerful technology while mitigating the risks.
Exactly. We need to embrace critical thinking, demand accountability from platforms, and be active participants in shaping the future of information.
I love that active participants. It's not about being passive consumers of information anymore. It's about being engaged, informed, and empowered citizens.
Precisely. And that's where I see hope. If we can rise to the challenge, if we can use this moment to become more discerning and engaged, then maybe we can turn this potential crisis into an opportunity for growth.
Turning a crisis into an opportunity, I like that. But how do we actually DO that? What are the concrete steps we can take to move from fear and uncertainty to action and empowerment?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've talked about the tech behind generative AI, the motivations behind fake news, and the role of social media platforms. It's a lot to take in. But before we wrap up, I want to focus on solutions. What can our listeners actually DO to navigate this increasingly complex information landscape?
Yeah, you're right. It can feel overwhelming. But remember, knowledge is power. You're already a step ahead by understanding how generative AI works and how it's being used to create fake news.
Awareness is a great starting point. But where do we go from there? What are some tangible actions our listeners can take?
Action starts with you. Be a critical thinker. Don't just passively consume information. Question everything. Check sources. Look for signs of bias. Think about who benefits from the information being presented.
It's like becoming your own personal fact checker.
Yeah.
But that sounds time-consuming and, honestly, a little exhausting.
It does require effort, but consider it an investment in your mental well-being. In a world overflowing with information, the ability to think critically is invaluable.
I like that. So critical thinking is key. What else can our listeners do to be more informed and empowered?
Be mindful of what you share. Before you hit that share button, pause and ask yourself a few questions. Is this information accurate? Is it coming from a reliable source? Am I contributing to the problem or the solution?
Think before you share. It's like a digital age update to the old adage, think before you speak.
Exactly. And remember, social media algorithms thrive on engagement. The more we interact with fake news, even if it's to express outrage, the more it spreads. So we need to be conscious of how our online behavior might be fueling the problem.
So how do we get better at spotting fake news? Are there any tools or techniques our listeners can use?
Absolutely. There are a lot of resources available. Did you know there are reverse image search engines? You can upload an image to see if it's been manipulated or taken out of context.
That's a great tip. I had no idea those existed. What about text-based fake news? Any advice on how to spot that?
Pay close attention to the language. Is it overly sensational or emotional? Are there a lot of grammatical errors or typos? Those can be red flags. Also, check the website or social media account where the information is coming from. Is it a reputable source? Do they have a history of spreading misinformation?
It's like becoming an online detective looking for clues and patterns.
Exactly. The more you practice these techniques, the better you'll become at identifying potentially false information.
Okay, so we've covered individual responsibility, but what about holding platforms accountable? What can our listeners do to push for change at the social media level?
Don't underestimate the power of your voice. Contact the platforms directly. Express your concerns. Demand more transparency about their algorithms and content moderation policies. Support organizations that advocate for digital rights and media literacy.
It's about using our collective power to push for a more ethical and responsible digital ecosystem.
Precisely. And remember, you're not alone. There's a growing global movement of individuals concerned about misinformation and working to find solutions.
It's a global problem that requires global solutions.
Fake news affects everyone. It erodes trust in institutions, undermines democracy, and polarizes society. It's a threat to our collective well-being.
So where do we go from here? What's the key takeaway for our listeners?
We're at a critical juncture. Generative AI has the potential to both empower and endanger us. It's up to us, as individuals and as a society, to choose which path we take.
We can either be paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, or we can choose to be empowered by knowledge and action.
The choice is ours. Every time we encounter a piece of information, every time we share something online, we're making choice. Let's choose wisely.
Those are powerful words to end on. Thank you for guiding us through this complex and important topic. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you have the power to make a difference. Be informed, be critical, be engaged. The future of information is in your hands.